Hello, Covenant family. This has been a really trying and difficult week, I think, for many in our country, going back to the murder of George Floyd and then the protests and all that's followed, including all kinds of different media attention on it. And I'll tell you, I've been struggling with what or if I should be saying much at all about this. The truth is, I look up to a lot of other people who I think talk about these things from a much better place and do it in a much better way than I do. And I also think primarily I'm more interested in putting up and listening to people of color and other voices rather than my own. And yet, one of the things that I felt in prayer that I needed to do was say, well, I am the pastor of Covenant United Methodist Church, and so it is important for me, at least in that small community, to use my voice in one way on this reality of what we're going through. And so I'm going to do that hopefully fairly briefly today. One of the things that I love about Covenant, and that I hope is something that we will always cling to, is being a church who cares for the hurting, who is aware of the needs of our community, our larger community surrounding us, or our church community, and the people within it who may be hurting, whether it's because they've lost a loved one, because they're going through a health concern, because they've experienced a disappointment in life, or the many other things in life that can happen. And so one of the things that I felt compelled to do was just to say first to those in our community who may be especially hurting because of what's happened recently and the ways that you experience it as part of your reality for who you are, because you're a person of color or because of your relationship to other African Americans in your life. I want you to know that we love you, I love you, and we want to do anything we can for you. And hopefully that doesn't sound empty or too late. I think hopefully if you're a part of this church, it's because you know that we love you. And secondly, for myself and the many others of us who are white, and there's kind of a little bit of a distance from how we experience some of these things, I hope that we'll try our best always to care for one another and the many people in our lives who may be experiencing this in a much more powerful, painful way. I was encouraged to do this partly because of a colleague who is a United Methodist pastor in Nashville, who pastors a historically black church, and he posted online just about how much it meant to him that so many of his white colleagues and church members had reached out and just checking in on him after all that has happened. And he was really touched by that. And I thought, well, that's a beautiful thing, and I hope that that's happening in the life of Covenant, where if you're not black, you're maybe reaching out to some friends and family and people in your lives that you care about, who are and who may be having an especially difficult experience these last couple weeks. Now, I also want to be very clear that one of the real challenges in times like these is there is no one answer and one step that we take that works and addresses everybody's pain and reality. And so the truth is, some may watch this video or get a call from me and kind of wish that they hadn't, or thought that wasn't a very good idea. And I'm sorry if my attempt or any of our attempts at offering love and healing aren't working, and we accept that humbly and move on and try different ways and try to learn other ways to do that better. But I know for some, at least, it can be helpful. I think I know our community well enough to know that for many here, that the act of calling one another and checking in and caring for one another is well received. And so I hope we'll be doing some of that with each other and with the many people in our lives that would be meaningful for. I also want to just acknowledge that that's one step that some of us can take and some of us may feel called to take. I acknowledge that it's a fairly small one for many of us, and that the more important steps may be how we're going to actually be a part of change and use whatever privilege and power and place in this world, whatever it is, to be able to make some sort of change that one's experience in this nation would not be so different based on the color of their skin. And so, of course, one of the things that is absolutely crucial in this, which I believe is both a political and a civil battle, but I also believe it's a deep spiritual battle between the kingdom of God and forces of evil, the powers and principalities at work, is how are we going to be a part of the change? And so share those on our member forums, share those with one another, and let's be talking about things that we can do to make a difference. And so that things don't just seem like they're staying the same forever, but instead that there's actual systematic change at these important levels. And so anyway, I hope that's helpful to y'all. I share it kind of in line with, if you've seen the Pentecost sermon, with the call in Acts to speak and to use your voice as the Spirit directs, or as the Spirit gives ability. And so this is just a small way that I hope I'm using my voice for good. If it's not helpful to you, I'm sorry, and that's not my intentions. And I hope that each of us will be prayerful about steps we can make. Don't be intimidated by the large reality that we're addressing here. And the truth is, the change is not going to come in one day or any one conversation or decision, but it's all of us coming together to do what we can to impact change. And so don't get so intimidated by it that we do nothing. I think one of the tempting things, at least for me at times, is that I see the imperfections of any one step I can take, or one thing I can do, where I feel like, well, that's, some people aren't going to like that, or that's not enough, or that won't accomplish this or this. But will it do some bit of good? Is God calling me to at least do this one thing that I can do today? And I think the answer is often yes, and I think often that's better than nothing. And so I hope we'll all feel encouraged about the steps that we can take towards racial justice in this nation, towards equality, towards us being more and more like how God has intended us to be in the kingdom of God. So thank you, Covenant family, and know that I love you, and that I know that we love God and love each other and want to be a part of the healing in the midst of this great brokenness.